Welcome back to the Building Confidence podcast, where I, your host, Louise as a party, share what I've learned through the years, through the tears, so you don't have to. This is episode 127. Oh my god. And we're going to be talking about your emotional immune system. This episode is proudly supported by Middies, and I'll talk a little bit more about them later on. I can't believe I've done 127 episodes, to be honest. But what I mean, let's get started into the podcast. What I mean by emotional immune system, I mean pretty much like our body's immune system, but for our emotions. So, our body's immune system is its ability to fight back on different bugs and different viruses. It usually influences, I'm not a doctor, so I'm probably butchering this analogy, but you know, fighting off bugs, fighting off viruses, but also doing little things like how you're able to cope in heat. If you have a healthy immune system and just a healthy body in general, heat can get exhausting, but it's not going to make you really sick. Obviously, we're in Australia, so stay safe. But if you have a weaker immune system or just a weaker, yeah, let's just stick with immune system. It might not be the right term medically, but if your immune system is weaker, then you're in heat, you might get sicker quicker than someone who has a stronger immune system. Um, this is the same for our emotions. There are things like emotional immune system, we're kind of lumping together resilience. So, resilience is a term that I don't really like to use too much because in my experience, a lot of companies are being like giving people resilience training instead of giving leaders leadership training and kicking bullies out of their companies. But I have a whole episode on that. But anyway, so resilience is part of that. Your mental health is part of that. So our emotional immune system takes hits. And depending on how strong our immune system is, depends on how quickly we bounce back or how much we get affected in the first place. So things like breakups, having shitty leaders at work, bullies, that kind of thing. All of these things are things that happen, and some things are preventable, like bullies, poor leaders, um, family gossip, workplace gossip. Then you have things like grief when you have loss, different type, like you've got a breakup loss, you have a death loss that way. And depending on how good our immune system is, our emotional immune system depends on how much these things affect us. If they affect you a lot, I don't want to shame anyone if things are being affected a lot, but we can help support ourselves in this time. And if you're watching this on YouTube, or I've decided to cut this clip out, I have my ratty shirt on, my hair's frizzy, I've got some paint on my arms, because one of the things that I do for my emotional immune system is paint. And one of the things that kind of takes a little nudge at my emotional immune system is worrying about how professional I'm going to look for this podcast and how professional I'm going to sound. And one of the things that kind of gets me that perfectionism analysis. And one of the things that I do to solve for that is try not to care as much, and also don't edit, don't write things out word for word. So yes, these podcasts come out a little bit messy, but they're out in the world. And all 30 of you that listen to it, I greatly appreciate you guys. But that in the emotional immune system, there are different things that can take a hit. Perfectionism hits harder, someone's feedback hits harder. Loss and grief, I'm going to intertwine this with that, but everyone's thing with loss and grief is different. I have recently lost 4 people in my life. We talked about Amber and Audi. So Amber's loss was like that 4th one in me, even though I didn't know her personally. It hit me really hard because my emotional immune system was weak because I had lost a coworker in a hit and run. My neighbor had passed away. My uncle committed suicide, and then when Amber passed away, I didn't have anything left to fight that kind of, I don't know, that situation. It really, really was a last straw for me. I didn't have any fight in me left to give, and I was quite broken for some time and still kind of recovering from that. And that's one of the things about the immune system. It takes hits. Our emotions take hits as well. If you're in a situation where you're being bullied at work and then your partner decides it's a great time to break up with you, that's 2 hits. That's like 2 viruses in one. Like, it's gonna hurt. but we can do things to build that back up. Like I said, I was just painting before I did this. I, you know, exercise, seeing friends. I had a friend over for lunch today, hanging out with my partner, you know, cleaning a little bit. If you saw my office, I think my office is a mess anyway. I need to fix that. But little things like that, our exercise, and even coming down to eating and our actual immune system can affect how we are. In the episode I just did before, talking about supporting people in harassments, if you are feeling lethargic and you feel like you aren't responding the way that you usually do to situations, you might actually be physically fatigued and your immune system might actually be something going on there. So there's an area of crossover here between your physical health and your mental health or your emotional immune system. One thing that the terms emotional immune system, the reason why it come up and the reason why I'm talking about it this way is because I was actually chatting to a client who had been working on her mental health for so long. And the words the word mental health it didn't mean anything for her anymore. It just felt so dried out, like she had been beating it to death. And then we started to talk, and I said, let's talk about it as an immune system, emotional immune system. And she kind of warmed to that idea. It was a good rephrase, a different spin on things to keep her motivated in moving forward. She's a single mum. She had a job change. The job's not exactly what she wants. Her ex-partner come back in, and then he left again. And she feels like it's really hit her really hard. And there are a few things in there that have weakened her emotional immune system. And she's doing the things, she's hanging out with friends, she's going to the gym. But like when we get a virus or a cold, we need to be doing these things that support us for a period of time before we're back to normal. And that's really where we talked about and we kind of labeled it that emotional immune system. It had been a few days and she's like, I'm just not back where I was. I used to feel so confident. I said, you got to give it some time because this immune system's got to kick back in and get you back up to where you are. And, in that sense, it's different for everyone as well. So this concept, emotional immune system, we're kind of putting a rename on mental health and resilience. And, if you are in a situation where you have heard those terms to death and you need a different reframe on them to kind of keep you going and motivated, please take that one, borrow that one. I don't know if someone's used it before. Maybe I heard it somewhere. That's why I feel like I come up with it in that call. I don't know. I don't try and claim things as my own, but sometimes they fire in my brain and they may or may not have heard it before. But anyway, we got to keep on going. We got to keep doing stuff. I'm sorry if this episode's a little bit messy, if this concept's a little bit messy. I wanted to get it out because I think a reframe can be really, really good and it can shake us up. Reframing things can kind of give your head a little bit of a spin on it and help you come up with just some different ideas to support yourself or to solve any different problem that you're reframing. So this episode is proudly supported by Middies. So Middies is a women's boxer underwear brand. There is a link in the description of this podcast for a discount. I literally tried these on, brought one pair, and then threw out all my other underwear. Well, ordered all of them first, made sure they arrived, and then threw out all my other underwear to, wear Middies because they are awesome and super comfy. All right, so that's that little ad bit. Now, if you want some help or support and you're a tradeswoman and you're thinking, okay, there's something up here, I need some support. The tips that you give out, Louise, are really, really great. If you're thinking that, you can send me a DM. We can book in a coaching consult. I would love to be able to support you in any way, shape, or form. So what we do on a coaching consult is we talk about where you are, where you want to be, and we start to make a plan to get there. Then if you decide that you want to work with me ongoing, so doing coaching with me, I usually like to work for people for a minimum of 6 months. And in that 6 months, we meet every second week. And what we do in those sessions is we discuss a problem, come up with a solution for a problem. Between our calls, you put that plan into place. Then we come back. The in the next 2 weeks, we talk about that. How did that work? Did it not work? Did it work? What are we going to do differently? Do we need to make a new plan of attack? Do we need to focus on another problem or another thing that's come up because you've solved that one? And then you go into that next 2 weeks, you put it into place, and we go. We do that for 6 months. We can usually solve a lot of problems and really, really build in some solid foundations for you to be able to go out and not need me after that 6 months, because you've got some really solid plans in place that work for you. So if you want some of that, please send me a DM on, you can send me a DM on Instagram at Louise as a Party Coaching, Facebook at Louise as a Party, Louise as a Party on LinkedIn, or you can use the link in the description of this and head to my website and send me a message through there. I would love to help and support you. So I'm going to sign off this episode like I usually do. If you don't believe in yourself right now, please borrow my belief in you. I know you can do anything you put your mind to. You might need to have a nap or a snack first, but I know you can do it. And I will see you next episode.